All right, guys, this week, Nets GM Sean Marks said that it's possible both Ben Simmons and Kevin Durant could be ready to play next week. When we finally do see both guys on the court, what kind of impact will that have in the land of DFS, Garion?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty substantial. Obviously, you're going to have a situation where, Ben Simmons probably isn't going to be the highest usage player in the world, but also if we factor in, Eric Adams coming out yesterday and saying that New York is in the process of removing its vaccination requirement, like Kyrie is probably going to be back in the mix on a daily basis too. So you're going to have the two tent poles of that offense, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, with usage rates hovering somewhere between 25 and 35%. You're going to have Ben Simmons on the court quite a bit. I mean, really, it's the biggest impact is just going to be the fact that Cam Thomas, Patty Mills, and Seth Curry are no longer going to be viable options in the 4K to 6K range. Other than that, I'm just kind of curious to see how Ben Simmons sort of augments this offense. I mean, he is someone who is obviously not the most adept offensive player in the half court. They've mentioned several times, they being the Nets, that they like how he profiles as someone who can attack in the transition and really implement that style of game into what they already have. So do they become a team that's like a top 5 pace team in the NBA? How much does he actually improve their defense? I mean, one of the easiest aspects of DFS for the first 4 months of the season has been, all right, is someone playing Brooklyn? They're probably going to have a pretty good game because they cannot defend anybody. So does Simmons make them a faster pace team, and does he make them a better defense are kind of two of the big questions for me going forward.
All right, cool. Whalen, where do you sit on this, man? Like, evaluating the fantasy value of, like, Nets players not named, like, really Irving or Durant could be difficult here moving forward.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously, I think Simmons is the linchpin here. It depends what version of Ben Simmons we're getting. Are we getting a confident version of Ben Simmons? Is it going to take him, several weeks to kind of get back into the flow? I thought it was interesting that at practice earlier this week, Steve Nash said he thinks Kevin Durant is closer to returning to game action than Ben Simmons. Kevin Durant is injured with a knee injury. Ben Simmons has kind of been hanging out for most of the last year. So that tells me that maybe Ben Simmons is not in the greatest shape. Maybe there's going to be some kind of basketball reconditioning. I mean, even guys like us who play pickup basketball, if you don't play for a while, it takes you, several games, several days to kind of feel back, get that comfortability back. And obviously that's exacerbated when you're on an NBA stage. So I've been kind of saying all along since they made this trade, I don't necessarily trust that Ben Simmons is just going to switch teams and all of a sudden be back to, first team all defense, great passer, triple-double threat. I think it's going to take some time. So, how that affects the guys around him, we'll see. And it's also worth noting that, there were some pretty interesting comments from New York City Mayor Eric Adams yesterday, essentially implying that vaccine mandate will likely be lifted at some point in the next month. So maybe that doesn't really have that much of an effect with the regular season since there's only 7 weeks left. But I think we're going to get to a point where Kyrie Irving is going to end up being a full-time player for this Nets team.
Yeah, Maddie, New York does plan to start phasing out its vaccine mandate here in the coming weeks. But another impact with these two dudes, when they eventually return to the floor, several role players could see their production drop.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty game by game for me, though, because I think this is kind of to what these guys have been talking about. We don't know how healthy Ben Simmons is. Like, is he going to play every game? Is Kyrie Irving going to still get rest games? Kevin Durant, I think, almost certainly will sit some games during the duration of the season because just the number of injury concerns he's had over the last 3 or 4 years. So on the nights where all of these guys are in, they're not going to be a very interesting team from a DFS perspective. They just have too many names and too many guys to take shots. But on the other nights, assuming that the prices on the role players come down as a result of this, on the other nights where you get, let's say, Kevin Durant resting, then Seth Curry, Patty Mills, James Johnson, whoever else, these guys are going to be a lot more appealing than even they are currently because the prices are going to go a lot lower. So it's going to be a very different Nets situation, very different analysis each game because I think the situations are just going to be very different night over night.